Hello, everyone. Good morning to this morning in the second day of the Common Course webinar. And I'm here to talk on a film named Rashomon and the later on the term which was coined after the film Rashomon. The film Rashomon is a 1950 Japanese film directed by really renowned film director Akira Kurosawa. And this film established Japanese cinema into international sort of domain. Film went on to winning the Golden Globe at the Venice Film Festival, and then honorary award for the most outstanding film in the foreign language category in 24th Academy Award, American Academy Awards. And by this time, when Akira Kurosawa made this film, I think Akira Kurosawa was about 42 to 43 years old, so quite a young director coming out from the that time pretty much cinema which was more restricted to Japan. Films which were made into Japanese language were again predominantly being seen by Japanese audience. And as you can see through the timeline that this is 1950, after the Second World War, when Japan was completely devastated by the Second World War, two of their biggest cities, industrial cities, were bombed with atomic bombs, and there was hunger, there was despair. So it was not the happiest time in Japan. It was probably the one of the worst time in Japan's history. So Akira Kurosawa set into this time period and think of a story uh, which later on completely changed the cinematic devices worldwide, and in fact, as I was mentioning, that in fact allow in law studies to term a coil to coil a term which is later known as Rashomon effect. Kurosawa set these stories into 1100 century Japan. Again, very desperate situations. The Kyoto city was ruined. There were wars. There were hunger, poverty. So Akira Kurosawa, sitting into 1950, set this story into 1100 century Japan, which is more or less like the same situation, and then talk about one of the biggest sort of a struggle in human history, what is truth. So here is a little bit of background of this story. The film is based on Ryunosuke Akutogawa. I probably may not be pronouncing the name correctly, and the two short stories, In a Groove and Rashomon. And so Akira Kurosawa took these two stories, blended them together, and then come up with this story, this film. Essentially, this film does not have the screenplay does not have many dialogue, but in Kurosawa's own language, he was trying to bring back the glory of the silent cinema. So in this film, there are more focus onto the silent narration through the emotional dilemma within the character. But absolutely, the film has some of the wonderful and most sort of haunting dialogue in it. The film is known for a plot which is devised that involves various characters providing subjective, alternate, and contradictory version of the same incident. So the story is one, and Kurosawa used the famous, what we use in today's film, a flashback trick. So in the story, the film comes and back into the time, that it travels back into the time in the story, then it comes into the present, then it goes back. So there is a enormous amount of back and forth movement. So this is not a linear film. So consider, a 1950s cinema where a director making a film, bringing the silent cinemas, sort of the golden era back, having really less amount of dialogue, and then a story which goes back and forth in time. So almost for that time of audience, it could have been confusing, but it was not. So here is the story. At the Rashomon gate of the ancient city of Kyoto, three people seek shelter from the rainstorm. And in Akira Kurosawa's film, there is never like a drizzling. Whenever you go and see Kurosawa's film, you will find that it's always big rainstorm. It basically comes like a thunderstorm, the rain, and rain itself is a character. As these three characters wait for the rainstorm to pass, they basically bring a story, discuss a story among together about a very horrific incident that just happened. A very, very disturbing event. And what is the event? The event is that a noble woman was raped, and a samurai was murdered, and a thief, a notorious sort of dacoit, was arrested. So this is what this story is. Now, as you see how I explained it, that there could be connections, what these people can be to each other, what is the relations to be each other, but that's where the story kind of pinpoint that the relationship and how the story unfold, there is not one version to that. In their recount of the crime, the murder of the death or murder or who knows what of the samurai raping the women, they recount the story where there is a testimony in the court, and where the four persons come to testify the incident. What are those which are those four people? One is the woodcutter, which is now present in the story in the present time at the Kyoto Rashomon gate at the city of the Kyoto. So the woodcutter, a commoner, and a priest, these three people meet in the Rashomon gate, and in the testimony, the woodcutter is there. The thief, Tajomaru, is also testify. The women also testified, and the spirit of the dead husband or samurai through a medium also testified about what happened to the women and to the samurai and the dacoit. They're entirely different and almost contradictory recollection of this story or retelling of this story is the center of this film. So all these four characters, the woodcutter, the thief, the woman who was raped, and the spirit of the samurai was dead, so the spirit through a medium also testify in front of the court. The four stories speak of their own version, which one is true, or is there a truth at all? That's what Kurosawa explains or trying to bring through this film. In Kurosawa's own words, that the human being, for human being, it is hard to be truthful with itself. And that's what Kurosawa trying to bring through this film, that even the dead, who has no stake in the world, even it's hard for dad to speak truth. That's what Kurosawa was kind of hammering around. So, here you have couple of the four kind of crust of those four scenes, the testimonies of the four scenes. I pull up 4 videos from YouTube, and these are short, though these videos probably give you glimpse into how the story unfold. So this is not the complete story, and the purpose of showing these videos is not to bring you the complete film. So it could be jumping for you, but for you to watch.
この激しい女を見たことがない。
Okay, so, all right. And then we go to the next portion of the film. So that was the first testimony by the thief Tajomaru in the court, and the kind of the summary of the testimony is that Tajomaru explained to the court that the woman was very fearful and she tried to fight with me, with her dagger, and that I fought with the husband, and the samurai uh, shared or encountered with me 23 times. So he kind of bring that specificity into the recollection of the story, that this was such a big fight, and I have never fought so bravely with anybody else. And that the women at the end, as you can see in this version of the film, that the women kind of surrendered and almost accompanied Tajomaru in the later part of the scene. So that was Tajomaru's version, or the thief's version of the story. Here, the wife's version of the story, and it is again like a very short portion of the story, but let's have a look.
やめて。そんな目で私を見るのやめて。あんまりです。私は撃たれても、いいえ、殺されても構わない。でもそんな目で私を見るのはあんまりです。私を殺してください。
All right, so that was wife's account, and again, in a nutshell. The wife testified that after Tajumaru raped me, Tajumaru flew into the forest. He kind of vanishes into the forest. I turned back to my husband, and my husband looked so coldly at me that I cannot take it. And I begged her to kill me, but he did not show anger, he did not show any sympathy, empathy, but he just stared there coldly, and I cannot take that look. So what the women was explaining there, that it was the look which was so haunting for me. I went on and cut the rope of my husband and freed him, but still my husband did not stand up, and he was keep looking very coldly at me without speaking a single word. And she explained that I was so horrified with that look that finally I took my dagger and kill and put my dagger in my husband's chest, or kind of kill him. Kurosawa never showed that exactly dagger going, kind of getting into the chest of the husband. So that was, I think, Kurosawa's brilliance, that he still left audience with no answer that how or who actually murdered or killed the husband. And then women explain that after killing my husband, I tried to kill myself. I jump into a river. I could not do that. I also get fainted at the end, and then when I wake up, I found myself at the shore of a river. So that was women version of the story. This is what the women testify into the court. You might have noticed that there is a famous bolero music as the background. That was again Kurosawa's brilliance in terms of how he interpreted the story. Here is the next, which is the samurai's account, the husband's account. And remember, I was referring that the samurai is dead. So Kurosawa used here again a famous Japanese way of bringing storytelling, and use a medium to explain what samurai's account is. So let's have a look to this. Can you increase the sound a little bit, please? Thank you. So here, husband in the court through a medium.
私は今闇の中にいる。一筋の光もない闇の中で苦しみもだえている。この苦言の闇に私を突き落とした者に呪いあれ。そこに腰を下ろしたままいろいろ妻を慰め出した。妻は当然と笹の落ち葉に座ったなりじっと膝へ目をやっている。娘とは巧妙に話を進めている。一度でも肌身を怪我したとなれば夫との仲も折り合うまい。そんな夫と連れ添っているより自分の妻になる気はないか。自分は愛しいと思えばこそこんな大それたまでも働いた。た時妻はうっとりと顔をもたげた。俺はまだあの時ほど美しい妻を見たことはない。 現在縛られている夫の前でなんと盗人に返事をしたか。
どこへでも連れて行ってください。
妻は確かにこう言った。しかし妻の罪はそれだけではない。それだけならこの闇の中で今ほど俺は苦しみはしまい。
あの人を殺してください。私もあの人は生きていてはあなたとは一緒に行かれません。あの人を殺してください。
この言葉は嵐のように今でも遠い闇の底へ真っ逆さまに私を吹き落とそうとする。これほど憎むべき言葉、これほど呪われた言葉が一度でも人間の口を出たことがあろう。この言葉を聞いた時には盗み出さに色を失ったのだ。
あの人を殺してください。あの人を殺してください。あの人を殺してください。あの人を殺してください。
And that was a summarized account of the story. Now, the summary of that part is that the samurai explained that after Tajumaru raped my wife, he tried to console my wife and convince her that, you know, your virtue is now kind of exposed, and now your husband will not be able to accept you, so why don't you come with me and marry me? And samurai testified that after my wife, I tried to tell my wife that don't fall into the words of the thief, but my wife agreed with the thief, and she looked at the thief as if she's the most beautiful woman at that moment, and she said to the Tajumaru, the thief, that take me wherever you want to take me. Those were the words which struck me. But then after when she stood up and told Tajumaru that now when my fate, my shame is known to two people in the world, I cannot live knowing that my shame is known to two persons. So why don't you kill my husband? And the samurai testified that those were the words which put me into dungeon or kind of, darkness. And that Tajumaru kind of dragged her onto the ground and asked me whether to kill her or not. And so Tajumaru came to me and cut my ropes. Meanwhile, my wife ran away, and when Tajumaru tried to snatch her or grab her, Tajumaru could not, and she ran away into the forest. So Tajumaru also ran behind her. I was alone there, completely in darkness, and at the end, I killed myself with the dagger of my wife because Tajumaru, the thief, had already taken my sword and his old sword. So that was summarized account. And we are running a little bit short of time, but here is the last account of the woodcutter who is telling the story at the Rashomon gate. And we probably just go a little bit into this one, and then I'll explain what the woodcutter is saying.
嘘だ嘘だ。男の胸に短刀など刺さってはいなかった。あの男はタツで刺されたんだ。これはなかなか面白くなってきたぞ。おい、 おめえはこの話の一部始終を見ていたらしいな。じゃあなぜ警備士とその話をしなかった？わしは係になるのは嫌だったんだ。しかしここで話す分にはいいだろう。おい、話せよ。おめえの話が一番面白そうだ。
私は聞きたくない。これ以上恐ろしい話はもうたくさんだ。
Let's jump a little bit up here.
しかし今日はダメだ。お前を手に入れたが、俺はお前がますます欲しくなるばかりだ。ますます苦しくなるばかりだ。頼む、俺の妻になってくれ。洛中洛外にその名を知られたこの田代丸が、こうやってルートをついて頼む。俺はお前がそうしろというのならこの土星から足を洗ってもいい。お前一人贅沢に暮らせるぐらいの金銀は隠してやる。いや、そのような汚れた金銀は好まるというのなら汗水垂らして働く。物売りに身を落としてもお前一人には苦労。
All right, let's stop here. So I want to go to the next slide, just kind of quickly running over what was the last portion of the story. So the woodcutter testified that none of those fought greatly, neither the Tajomaru nor the samurai. They were very fearful when they were fighting. Tajomaru almost begged the women to marry him, and he was begging the women. And then at the end, the women said that, you both of you are, just full of shit. You are not men. A man should win a woman by courage and by sort of, by the valor. So women prompted these two to fight, and that in that fight, accidentally Tajomaru killed, almost accidentally, the samurai, and the women, in between the women run away from there. So that was the woodcutter's sort of version of this story. This is what Kurosawa said on the Rashomon in one of the Kurosawa's interview, that the problem, one of the Kurosawa's assistant director came to ask Kurosawa that, please explain the story. I'm not getting to get this story in. So the Kurosawa said that human beings are unable to be honest with themselves, about themselves. They cannot talk about themselves without embracing the script portrays such human beings, the kind who cannot survive without lies to make them feel they are better people than they are really are. It even shows this sinful need for flattering falsehood going beyond the grave. Even the characters who dies cannot give up his lies when he speaks to the living through a medium. Egoism is a sin the human being carry with him from the birth. It is most difficult to redeem. That was Kurosawa's sort of discussion, or Kurosawa's explanation in a nutshell about this story. I will leave that part. This is Robert Altman on the Rashomon. You can go Google it, YouTube it, and this is what famous film critic explaining about the idea of Rashomon. So that's it. Now I want you to go on something called Mentimeter. If you are online right now, and use this code, go to www.menti.com, menti.com, and use the code 908303888, and fill up there what your takeaway from this story is. The relativity of the truth, is unreliability and inevitable subjectivity of the memory, is dishonesty of the human with the itself, is the perception of the truth what is seen is as truth, or all of these, or probably none of those. So this is where I will stop in terms of this presentation. This is the story which stuck with me since 2004. First time I acted in a theatrical adaptation of this film or a play based on this story. And later on, I saw this film many times, and this is the film which kind of, speak essentially on the idea that what is truth. Is truth is what I recall, remember, I interpret, what I perceive being in my own context, or truth is beyond that, or there is no truth at all. That's it's all relative. That's what bringing Einstein's theory of relativity. So thank you so much. I hope you enjoy it. If you are watching it, if you are online, thank you. Have a good one.